As we get started here, let's talk. Let's be honest. I think every business hopes and wants to have raving fans, right? Every business wants to kind of have that crowd that just can't seem to get enough of you. And yet, here's the reality: that doesn't happen a lot. If you're seeing the slides here, which I trust you are, what you're seeing is there's our goal. We want to have these raving fans, and yet there's just this missing piece. And our job is to try to figure out what's missing, what doesn't happen. Because what tends to happen for most businesses, and this is not a real estate thing, this is just businesses in general, we accept satisfaction. In fact, when I was in healthcare, we had satisfaction surveys. We had the Press-Ganey surveys, and we had a 5-point scale, and 5 was the most satisfied, and 1 was the least satisfied. But here's the thing: when we aim for just satisfying our customers, what we find is that satisfied customers may or may not ever do repeat business. In fact, if you look at the National Association of Realtors data, what they say is 90% of home buyers say at the completion of a transaction that they would use their agent again, and yet only 13% actually do. 90% say they will, 13% say actually do, 17% of those buyers do in fact place referrals. But there's this huge chasm between folks who were satisfied but not necessarily satisfied enough to become an advocate. Satisfied customers rarely become advocates for your business. And when we use advocates, the word advocate, the root word there is vocate. It's to use your voice. Satisfied customers alone very rarely help you grow your business. And so let's talk about that a little bit. This comes from Ken Blanchard, considered one of the great minds in business and management for years. And here's what Ken says. He says, your customers are only satisfied because their expectations are so low and because no one else is doing any better. Just having satisfied customers isn't good enough anymore. If you really want a booming business, you have to create raving fans. And so Ken and Sheldon Bowles kind of wrote this one. If you have been around the business space for a while, this was written a while back. I'm taking a look at the date here. It looks like 1993 this came out. But here's the thing. We're going to talk a little bit about some ideas that a lot of different folks have in business in terms of how to create these raving fans when satisfied customers is simply not enough anymore. And here's what it takes. I think overwhelmingly what we're going to talk about today is that we're now in an experience economy. Just being competent and performing a task and getting the task done is not enough in business any longer. And there's a course that I teach. It's part of the Keller Williams curriculum called the Customer Experience. And in that course, it's an interesting course because it was based on the work of Sue Adler. And a number of years ago, some of you guys may know Sue. Mike, I think you're trying to talk, but all I hear is a buzz. So if you've got something that you're jumping in with, feel free to just pop that into chat for me. That would be great. Sue Adler's agent out of Summit, New Jersey, the Keller Williams office there in Summit. And a number of years ago, probably 2012-ish, she teamed up with a blogger, a real estate blogger named Rob Hahn. And she and Rob toured the country with this program called Hear It Direct. And what Hear It Direct was designed to do was to get real estate agents in front of consumers and really just interview them in a panel environment to sort of get a feedback from the consumers in terms of what was it really like to work with us. And it's fascinating when you look at some of the video that's associated with that class. You will hear buyers asked by the panel moderator, tell me about your experience working with your agent. And he says things like, it was okay. I mean, I got the home that I wanted in the neighborhood that I wanted at the price and the terms that I wanted. And the moderator said, that sounds like a really good experience. He says, I expected to get that. That's why I hired an agent. But she didn't do anything special, right? She didn't do anything special. She just delivered an outcome. That's the reality of the environment that businesses, not just realtors, but businesses find themselves in. And we call it the experience economy. No longer is it good enough to get the job done, but we have to get it done and deliver a world-class experience in the process. So let's start with what some of the thinkers are thinking. I'm going to go back to Ken Blanchard and Sheldon Bowles, back to this book that they wrote back in 1993. It's a pretty easy read. You can download it and read it, probably knock it out in a night. And it's the story of sort of someone who takes over as the area manager for a new business. And as he's starting to kind of learn the ropes, he kind of finds that there's these three things that are important in terms of delivering a world-class experience for his customers. Number one, decide what you want. Decide what you want your business to look like. And what does that mean? It means have a vision of what delivering excellent service would look like at every step of the consumer interaction. And not just what it means to kind of perform the task, but what would it look like when the consumer interfaces with your business for that experience to be truly world-class, and have a vision for that. Step number two that they talk about is don't leave anything to chance. Put systems in place to guarantee that that world-class vision really happens. You know, one of the things that I can tell you that happens with a lot of agents' business is as they get busier, the quality of what they deliver starts to go down. And it's not surprising, right? We have this vision of Lucille Ball in the I Love Lucy episode, you know, the one where she's got all those candies on the conveyor belt and it's moving faster and faster. She's got to try to pick them off. It's as things start to get hectic, things get sloppy. And as teams grow and they bring on more agents, if we don't have systems and standards in place in terms of what world-class looks like, that we can deliver and hold people accountable to delivering in that manner, as new people come onto teams, what begins to happen is the vision starts to get sloppy. I see this happen frequently with an agent who does a really great job and grows their business and now starts to bring on buyer's agents. And suddenly consumers don't have the same experience. So have systems to put in place. Decide what you want first. Decide what it looks like, and then put systems in place to make sure that it happens. And then, interestingly enough, then we go to the client, according to Blanchard and Bowles, and ask the client, what do they want? And it's interesting because intuitively, a lot of times you would think, why don't we just start with what the client says is important to them and then try to deliver that? And what Blanchard says is, no, you have to have your own vision first. You have to have an expression of what you believe passionately in first, and then take that to the consumer and measure up what the consumer wants. Step number two is decide what the client wants. And in order to do that well, one of the things that we have to do is really get clear on who is our client. One of the biggest challenges that we have in business, and it's a big challenge for real estate agents, is that we believe that anyone who's willing to hire us is our client. And that is a dangerous mistake, because not everyone is the right fit for everyone. You cannot be everything to everybody. What we teach in the course Lead Gen 36-12-3, in the very beginning of that course, what we ask people to start to do is to start to say, who is your ideal client and why? What is it about you? What is it about your talent? What is it about your life experiences that makes you the ideal fit for this kind of subgroup? And how do you make that connection? Be clear about who your client is. Find your market niche. You will find, and some of you guys have seen this in some of the other classes, we talk about this in the Ignite class. If you look at the top agents in this industry, they do not try to work in too many different markets. I think for us in real estate, one of the biggest ways that we can niche our business, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, is to find a geographic area that we're going to dominate and not try to spread ourselves out and work in too many markets. If you look at the very top agents, what you're going to find across the board, I have studied numerous MLSs for years, and again and again and again, what you find, top 10 producers do 40 to 70% of their business in only one town. They don't try to work all over the county. And the reason for that is you can't develop the level of expertise that it takes to separate yourself from all of the choices out there unless you've got very, very specific knowledge. One of the things that you'll find is that people will not pay for generalist knowledge. They're only going to pay for specific knowledge. And I learned that in healthcare. If you think about doctors, you could think about somebody who graduated from Harvard, one of the top medical schools in the world, and practices general medicine versus someone who graduates from a much lesser known school but practices cardiothoracic surgery. Who do you think is getting paid more money? It's always going to be the surgeon, because specialty skills and specialty knowledge is what people will pay for. Find your niche, become a specialist in your niche, and then find out what's important to your niche market. Because as you try to get broader in your market, you're going to find there's just too many competing demands of what people want from you. So step number 2, once you've identified what world-class service is, then go and apply it to your niche and start to find what they want. Ask them. Just ask them. Use surveys. You can rely on surveys like the National Association of Realtors surveys, but ask people questions. And when you're asking a question of what world-class service looks like, be comfortable, be careful rather to listen for what's not being said, as well as what is being said, right? I would probably, if you wanted to, I would throw a quick question out onto your own social media fields. It doesn't have to be a survey format question, but it's just a question on your Facebook feed that says something like, if you or one of your family or loved ones needed to hire a professional realtor this year, what would be the most important thing that you would be looking for, right? What's the most important thing that they could do for you? And just try to get a sense of what's important. Step 1, find the vision of what you think world-class looks like. Step 2, find out what the client thinks. And then step 3, according to Blanchard and Bowles, is deliver +1, right? Now, what does that mean? Well, what it means is do an analysis of your business. And some of you will recognize that word SWOT, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? That's an abbreviation. What's the strength? What do we do well? What's our weakness? What do we do not so well? What's an opportunity for us? And what's our biggest threat? What's our biggest challenge? And when you do that kind of analysis, what Blanchard and Bowles say is, don't try to correct everything right away. Don't try to fix everything and make huge, huge gains. Just try to get incrementally better. If you could get 1% better, and then 1% better again, and then 1% better again, where would you focus to kind of get 1% better? And over time, if you take that mindset of just trying to keep inching it along, what you're going to start to develop is really world-class service. So these are the 3 ideas for starters that Blanchard and Bowles put out there. And this has kind of been stuff we've, in the business world, talked about for decades. This came out in the 1990s. But let me ask you guys to just think about this for yourself. Of those 3 steps, have a vision of what world-class looks like to you. Find out what your niche market is and ask those folks. And then 3, commit to 1% better all the time. What are those? What's the biggest takeaway in their work for your guys' business? I'd love for somebody to just unmute and kind of think about, of all those ideas, what's the biggest one that would be important for you guys? Anybody have one of those that really resonates?
For me, I would say developing a niche market, because I notice certain top agents in certain areas, they seem to have their photo all over the place in like a few towns.
Yeah, it's so counterintuitive. It wasn't too long ago when we were in the offices, and I remember I was in Fort Lee, and there was a good agent, a very successful agent, trying to offer some guidance to a new agent. And what the feedback is you have to be a generalist, because you don't know in the beginning where someone is going to need your services. You got to know a little bit about this town, and a little bit about that town, and a little bit about commercial, a little bit about residential. And I can promise you there is no faster way to fail as a new agent than to take that advice. What you need to do, what successful agents do, is they pick a lane and they try to build momentum into that lane. What you're going to find is every single geographic market does have somebody who dominates, but they're never as dominant as you think they are. The years ago, we used to say that if any particular agent had 20 to 25% market share of their own, that they would probably be the 900-pound gorilla, that market may be just too hard to break into. Go find some lower hanging fruit somewhere else. And what I'm going to tell you is it is extraordinarily rare to see any agent that has that kind of market share right now. If you look at even the Godzillas of the world, most of them are sitting at 10 to 15 market share at the best. Most towns, if you look at most towns in New Jersey, what you're going to find is that the number one agent in that town in terms of unit volume probably controls 5 to 7% of the market themselves. By the time you get to number 5 on that list, you're probably at about 2%. By the time you get to number 10 on that list, you're probably below 1%. And for sure, by the time you're 15 or 20 on that list, it's only one transaction each for the whole rest of the list. And so with a focused plan, it's not as hard as you think to break into that niche market geographically. And I think that's the real goal for us as real estate agents is to think about it that way. Any other takeaways from what these guys said before we move on to some tips from the Realty Times? Then let me share with you a couple ideas. This came from the Realty Times in terms of what are the things that strengthen relationships that lead to repeat and referral business. Number one, use handwritten notes when you reach out to your clients. Now, those of you that are in Ignite know that we have this thing that we call the 10-4. And there's 4 areas that we try to get folks to do 10 things a day in. One area is try to find 10 new people to meet and put them in your database. Number 2 is to try to talk to 10 people that you already have a relationship with. Number 3 is to try to write 10 handwritten notes a day. And I can tell you, I have been teaching this Ignite course for years and years and years and years. And as we track the numbers, what I find is that the handwritten notes rarely happen. And that's a shame because that really is a difference maker. Think about the last time that you got a handwritten note in the mailbox. Just one of these little note cards. It doesn't have to be branded. It doesn't have to be super special. I've got stacks of them right here in my desk here. And it's just an opportunity when you meet somebody or interact with them to just take a couple of seconds to write a note to them and send it on their way, right? Handwritten notes are one of the things that we know for fact strengthens the relationship and causes people to feel special because it's something that has just disappeared in our interaction with people. We just don't do it anymore. When was the last time you got a letter from somebody? You remember those letters you wrote in camp when you were a kid? How are you? I am fine. You have the whole format down, right? But these handwritten notes, number one, thing that Realty Times suggests. Number 2, reach out to clients during special moments in their lives, right? It's not just about when the transaction's over, we don't keep in touch. Reach out to them during special moments in their lives. And how do we know when there's a special moment? Well, a lot of us use social media for that. A lot of us would stalk someone on Facebook and just kind of watch and see when something special happens, we reach out and we acknowledge. And what I would tell you is that if you really want to make an impact, what a lot of folks have learned to do is when they see on social media that something special has occurred in someone's life, their daughter got engaged, they did whatever they did, right? They went on a trip, who knows what it is. When something special happens, rather than commenting on that Facebook feed or that Instagram post and being one of 325 people, take a minute, pull out a handwritten note and then write, I saw on Facebook that your daughter got engaged. Oh my gosh, you must be so excited. I'm so happy for you. Close the thing, put it in an envelope, pop a stamp on it and send it on the way. And that is how you make people feel special. This is the experience economy. And we've got to figure out how to create different experiences. Step number 3 from the Realty Times. Be a community resource. Be known as the go-to person in your target market that people go to when they want to know stuff. You know, when is registration for Little League going to be this year? Is the Conservation Center going to be open this weekend? All that kind of stuff. If you can be the go-to person that is known as the answer person, the hub of information in your target market, you are going to be an extraordinarily valuable person. And what a lot of folks do is they create a YouTube channel and it's free to do. And maybe once a week, they just create a short little video. Hey, this is Hal. And I just wanted to give you an update of what's going on in Westfield today. You know, today's the 29th of December and this week, blah, 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 whatever. It can include real estate information. It can just include neighborhood information, but become a community resource step number 3. And then fourth one, which you touched on before, is engage in social media, right? And I know a lot of folks who say, I'm not a social media person, and I don't want to kind of have people get that close to me and see my family and all my kids and all that sort of stuff. Fine. You get to decide what level of exposure you want to have in social media. But here's what we know. People are on social media platforms. And I'll tell you, I personally have chosen to really step away from social in the last year. I think the whole political climate and all the things just became so toxic for me that I just needed to step away from it. It's not to say I've abandoned it, but I've stepped away. But be engaged enough that you can kind of be involved with people and in people's lives. So the steps here in the experience economy from Realty Times is be engaged with folks during special moments, use handwritten notes to acknowledge them, be a community resource, and be involved in their lives in social media. Those are 4 tips. Anybody doing any of those things right now? Which ones? Elvis, what are you doing? What are you having success with?
Just posting social media stuff like fluff.
Okay.
I was told to try to post something daily, no matter what it is.
Yeah, I think you want to be present. You want to be seen. And the beauty of that is you can even schedule that in advance. You can take an hour once a week and schedule all your posts for the next week, right? And have those automatically done so you don't have to log on every day if you don't want to, right? Okay, let's go on to some other ideas here of how to create these fans. I'm going to go now to this one. This is Joanne Calloway. Clients first. So who are these guys? Who are clients first? Well, these guys are based in Arizona. Joe and Joanne Calloway. They started a business, their brokerage, and they called it Those Callaways, right? A husband and wife team, kind of homespun folk, right? And what I'm going to tell you is in the first 10 years of their business, they closed $1 billion in real estate volume. That's $100 million in sales a year. Now, it's not just them. They've kind of created this whole team, this whole company. But here's what they've said. And I heard them speak at a keynote event. And a couple things that they really talked about. Number one, the 3 keys to prioritizing your clients' needs. Number 1, honesty. Number 2, competence. Number 3, caring, right? And so much of what the Callaways talk about seems so natural and so intuitive that it's almost like, I can't believe you actually wrote a book to tell us this because I already know this. It's one thing to know it. It's another thing to really do it, right? And when they talk about honesty, they talk about things like, do we give our opinions? What do we say in our opinions? And I think a lot of times we're cautioned to not give opinions and things like, is this a good school district? Right? That's kind of a non-starter. There can be a lot of challenges with things like that. But when people are evaluating an offer, and do you think this is really a good deal? Should I take this? How do we honestly let them know what we think without deciding for them? That's the kind of thing they're talking about. Competence is a big thing for them. One of the things that they really stress is, are we doing as a fiduciary what we need to keep our skills sharp? Then you guys probably may or may not be familiar with what's called the Danger Report, which was a study done by the National Association of Realtors in 2015. Anybody familiar with the Danger Report? Just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Here's what the Danger Report is. Thumbs down. Okay. The Danger Report was designed to take a look at the profession of real estate and start to figure out what are the biggest threats to us as professional realtors. And they looked at competitive business models. They took a look at disruptive business models. They took a look at different commission structures, technology, all these different things that could change our business to the negative. And what they found was the biggest threat to professional realtors is crappy realtors. That the biggest threat to our industry is there are too many untrained, unethical, unsupervised agents running around there doing disastrously bad work and bringing down the value of the profession for the rest of us. Maintaining your competence knowing where your skills are and where they're not, and not trying to do business outside of your skill set. I see it happen all the time. I got a call over the weekend from an agent, not actually an agent in our Bergen Partners group, but an agent that I knew from another business that I was involved in, who said, I have an opportunity to do this deal of someone that I know, and it's a big warehouse project, and they're looking for a warehouse project. They need to have it would be ideal to have rail transportation in and out of this project. And I'm like, hold up, time out. What do you know about this kind of commercial business? And they called me and said, nothing. That's why I'm hoping that you can tell me what you know. I'm like, you are so far over your head here. This is not competence. You know, in any other industry, if you are, and I come out of healthcare, in healthcare, if you perform surgery outside of your field of expertise, we call that malpractice and we take your license away from you. But in real estate, we don't do that. We allow people to kind of dabble in things that they really have no business doing. And so what we talk about here with Clients First is, at minimum, when you have an opportunity that's outside of your skill set, invite someone else in who's got those skills. Learn from them, but do it together so that you have kind of a guardrail to make sure that you're not making mistakes. You've got to care. Step number 3, caring for folks. People don't really care what you know until they know you care. You've heard that before. They go on to talk about philosophical guidelines of showing gratitude, of showing respect, and respect in the way of respecting people's decision-making, even if it's different from our own. Communicate well, develop your communication skills. Obedience, we have that as a fiduciary responsibility to do what people tell us, even if it's not what we would want, right? Some additional commitments that the Callaways talk about, and I'm telling you something, success leaves clues, guys. Doing $100 million in real estate volume a year in Arizona, in a market where your average price point is about $185,000 a house, they know some things. Here's what else they say. Put your own monkeys down. What does that mean? It means recognize that we've all got stuff in our own lives. And if we're really going to put clients first, we've got to kind of take our monkey off our own back and leave it at the door. We can't let our own needs. Now, sometimes that monkey can be screaming loud and clear. Sometimes that monkey says, I need this closing to happen because financially I'm in a pinch. And we need it to happen maybe more than the buyers and the sellers need it to happen. And that leads to a certain kind of commission breath that everybody knows smells terrible, right? Just learn to leave your monkeys at the door. And if you can focus on other people's needs first, it's easier to just forget your own for a while. Learn to like people. Learn to like people, even people who are different from you, even people who have different political views, even people who voted for different political candidates, even people, just learn to like people. Find something in them that is good. And I'll tell you a funny story. I remember I had an agent when I managed another office, and I won't tell you which one because I don't want you to try to figure out who this was, but this agent did a pretty good book of business, Circle of Excellence, silver or gold level winner every year, never repeat business. Never repeat business. And the reason was because she just didn't like people, and it showed. And I said to her, you know, your life would be so much easier if you just were nicer to people and you could get some referral business because you do a lot of business. And she said to me, I don't like people. I do this because it pays the bills. But quite honestly, as soon as the transaction is over, I want them the hell out of my life. I'm like, that is not the way to live if you want to be successful in this business, right? Learn to like people. Put your faith in others. Give to get. We call that in this company coming from contribution. Trust that you can get anything that you want in your life if you help other people get what they want first. And let the work be your reward. Let serving others be the reward. And here's this goes back to, you know, just old sales adages. Some of the oldest sales trainers have said, look, if you learn to love serving people, if you learn to love making positive difference in people's lives, you will be financially rewarded for that. And it's just come from contribution. Let the work be your reward. And, you know, again, some of this is just pretty intuitive. You know, it's like you really had to write a book to tell me this because so much of this doesn't happen. You heard Ken Blanchard say the reason why people are satisfied is because their level of expectation is so low, right? Anything here in their work that rings to you, that sort of speaks to you, that says this is the most important thing that I should take away from here? Anybody have anything that resonates in the Callaway's work?
Can you put the slides back?
Say it again.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Put down your monkeys, learn to like people, put your faith in others, give to get, let the work be your reward. Gratitude, respect, communicate, honesty, competence, caring.
Say honesty is number one.
Yeah, okay. Terrific. Anybody else? Then I want to go on to somebody who I really admire. And I'd show you the cover of his books, but they're in here. They're in my Kindle, so you can't see them. But this is Christopher Lochhead. And I got to tell you something about Christopher Lochhead. He is just a guy that I just enjoy. Number one business podcaster on Apple iTunes, has the number one spot in the business podcast world there. Also, number one marketing books all over Amazon. Chris is a guy that's the former CMO, the chief marketing officer for 3 different Silicon Valley startups. One called Vantive, one called Scient, and the other one called Mercury Interactive. Took these basically from garage startups to IPO offerings that opened up at hundreds of millions of dollars. And really seen as one of the marketing geniuses in Silicon Valley. He's been called one of the best minds in marketing by the Marketing Journal. He's been called a human exclamation point by Fast Company because of his just energy level. He's been called by Bill Walton, NBA player Bill Walton calls him a quasar, just this super energy star that's out there. And a lot of people find him a little off-putting because he can be kind of a little bit in your face. But here's the takeaway from Chris. Chris is one of the great thinkers in the marketing world today. And I'll tell you, after selling out, after starting these 3 tech companies and taking them to hundreds of $1 million in sales, he's basically sold his companies. And now all he does is trains, coaches, and writes. And in his book, Play Bigger, one of the things that he says, that if you really want to start to develop a fan base, you've got to make a decision about what do you want to be known for. That's not that different if you know the work of Simon Sinek, who says start with why. It's, start with why you do things. And then from there, how you do things, but it starts with why. And what do you want your business to be known for? What is your unique point of view? That's one of the things, just as we talked about finding a geographic niche, what Chris says as an entrepreneur is we've got to kind of look at the marketplace and start to figure out where is there an unmet need that the marketplace has, and how can I fill it differently than other people can, so that I create kind of this new category niche. Chris is probably considered sort of the godfather of what we call category design in business. And what is category design? It's kind of this whole niche, new category of service. I'll give you an example of what he talks about. This thing, right? Smartphones. We've all got one. And for most of us, if I was to say, when I point at a smartphone, what brand do you think of? 95 people out of 100 are going to say Apple, right? Apple is the king of the smartphone category. And it's fascinating because Apple's not even a phone company, really. They were a computer company. And what Lochhead says is what Steve Jobs did a good job of was taking a look at what consumers had a gap in their need, as entrepreneurs all do. What an entrepreneur does is they look for a gap in service and try to find a unique way to fill it. Apple did not become the category king of smartphones by trying to improve upon the flip phone experience, because the flip phone experience was fine for what it was, right? And becoming incrementally better in a category doesn't make you a category king. Finding a missing piece and then filling that niche in new and unique ways does. Uber did not become the category king of rideshare by trying to become an improved version of a taxi cab service. The story of Uber, the founders of Uber are standing in Paris on a cold, rainy night, and they can't get a cab to stop. And what they thought of is, why is it that I have this device in my hand that can attach me to any place in the world, and I can't get a cab to come when I need one? And the connection in the head was made to say, how do we bridge that gap differently and form Uber, right? Now, in the business that we're in real estate sales, look, I'm not suggesting that we find an entirely different new category, although there are those that are out there who are trying to do that. Think about companies that have disruptive technology models that do things like Open Door. What is Open Door? Open Door is a company that goes out there and uses big data to take a look at a property address and pull up all the public records and try to figure out, based on public records, what do they think that home is worth? And then with investor funding, go and just place an offer. Dave, I don't know if you have any interest in selling your house, but here's what I know. I did the research. I think your home is worth this. And if you were going to sell it using a realtor, they would take 5 or 6% away and you would net that. But I'm going to give you an all cash offer today. And it's not quite that. It's a little bit less. It's not 94% of your asking of your market value, which is what you would probably net after you paid a realtor 6%. But I'd give you 91 or 92, and I'll give you cash. We'll close in 2 weeks. We won't do an inspection. We'll just take it. Are you interested? And they're going out and they're pitching those offers out there. And here's what you're going to find. Lots of people are interested. Lots of people are interested. And a lot of times people say, why would anybody take less than market value? It's because the trade-off of the convenience, right? It's the trade-off of the convenience. If you've ever traded a car in at the dealership, you'll know that you could have sold it for more money if you sold it privately. But it was the convenience of just leaving it with him that you were willing to take less. And that's kind of a whole niche model. Compass, right? A brand new model out there in the world. One of the things that Compass does is they get investor money back there. And they go out and they front load sellers to say, look, here's what your home would be worth today. However, we think that if you did this repair and that repair and that repair, you could sell it for more money. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to have our investors pay to do that repair for you. We believe that we're going to get more money at sale. And at the time of sale, we're going to take that money back and repay the investors. And as a listing brokerage, we're going to charge a commission on top of that. Is that something that you have any interest in? Right? That's a need that Compass believed was out there, that home sellers needed to fix things up so they could make more money, but they didn't have the cash. That's kind of this category niche. And I'm not suggesting that we at our level try to do that and to get that kind of a venture capital funded startup. But let me tell you something. I'll go back to Open Door for a second. Open Door has a market value of over $3 billion. Open Door accounts for about 15% of all the transaction volume in the markets that they're in. And so the thought is, if you get creative, there's different ways to do it. On our level as an individual agent, I think where we look is, where's the gap in service? And the gap in service is in expertise. The gap in service is really having that deep, hyper-local knowledge of the market, that I can really be a good consultant, that I know everything, the ins and outs of this market, because I've gotten so deep. Gary Vaynerchuk, another great marketing genius, will say that the mistake that businesses make is they try to go too wide and not deep. And so I think one of the big gaps is, do I have really deep product knowledge? Have I been in personally every single listing in the market so I know it firsthand? Do I know everything about the amenities in the community? And if not, how can I kind of bridge that gap? What would it take to get that level of expertise? Am I a world-class consultant? Can I guide people through conversations and decision-making so that they can take my knowledge and then use it and then make decisions that are in their own best interest and then get into action? Those are some of the biggest gaps right now that our consumers face, is the absence of real knowledge, market knowledge, and really great consulting skills. Those could be great places to focus on filling that niche in different ways, right? In his book, Niche Down, he gets back into what's your unique niche again. And he talks about, do you have the courage to stand out? Do you have the courage to be different? Right. And it does take some courage sometimes to kind of stand out and do things differently and to take some chances. What Hal Elrod said in the introduction to Niche Down, Hal Elrod is the author of the book, The Miracle Morning, if you're familiar with his work. He says, be known for a niche that you own. This is a powerful idea, one that transforms how people think about their lives, careers, and their business ventures. Decide where you want to be known, decide what you want to be known for, and then go super deep, right? And again, back to Simon Sinek again, what Simon says, there you go, Simon says, what Simon articulates well is that the goal of business is not to try to get into a relationship with people who need your product or service. The goal of business is to try to get into a relationship with people who see the world the way that you see the world, to build a community of people who kind of think the way that you think, be a resource to them, get into a relationship with them, and then when they need the service and product that you provide, they'll pick you because they've already accepted your relationship, right? That's the vision here. And what Chris says, like so many others, is get clear on what your niche is, get clear on how you're going to be different, what you're going to be known for. Here's what he says. Consumers are so overwhelmed by the dizzying array of choices that they flock to the best solution, or at least the best known. This is why market dominance is so important, right? In the face of so much competition and complexity, picking the best known provider is a coping mechanism, right? And so again, it's too hard to be well known in all aspects of real estate in all parts of New Jersey. Pick a lane and go deep. What does Chris say? Anything that Chris talks about that kind of gets your attention that you think is relevant for your businesses? Have a lot of people on off camera and off mic, which is great, but I'd love to hear people jump back in again. Anything that Chris talks about that gets your attention? Becoming the category king and trying to figure out where there is that gap.
I can add something. Basically, how he said you have to be kind of brave, and it does take courage to stand out there. It's kind of nerve-wracking to make yourself.
It does.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. And Dave, I saw your message. I'll reach out to you later about that. Okay. Here's the thing. It takes courage because when you're standing alone, it's easy to be criticized and it's easy to make mistakes and it's easy to be judged and all those things, right? When you're newer, a couple of weeks ago, I did a lunch and learn on how do you overcome the imposter syndrome, right? When you're newer and the big fear is I haven't really developed the mastery that I want yet. And I don't really want to kind of take a chance of getting in front of folks and having them expose me for not really being as prepared as I probably wish that I was, right? And how do you overcome that? We talked about, but it does take some courage. And the thing that I'm going to tell you though is this, that courage is generally rewarded with loyalty. When people take a risk and they try to stand out and find a unique way to meet the needs that our clients have, it's usually rewarded with great appreciation. And what you find is people will forgive imperfections and mistakes along the way if they truly believe in the integrity of the attempt. If they truly believe that you're doing your best to meet their needs in new and novel ways, they'll forgive sometimes mistakes, but it takes some courage. All right, I want to go to a couple more things here in the 10 minutes that we've got left. I want to talk about Jesse Cole. I love Jesse Cole. This is Jesse Cole. Find your yellow tux. And this is just fun. Jesse is the owner of the Savannah Bananas. Now, the Savannah Bananas are a really, really cool baseball team, minor league baseball team. And they're a coastal plain league team, I guess. They're based in Savannah, Georgia. And they only started, the team incorporated in 2016, and they have sold out every single game from 2017 through 2019. Going into this pandemic season, they were on an 88-game sellout streak. Now, I got to tell you something. I'm a baseball fan. I kind of like minor league baseball because it's fun to watch, and it's cheap to go to. And there's a lot of minor league teams around where you can go. in my alma mater, Montclair State. You can go up to Montclair State and see a game there. You can go lots of places. I'm not far from the Patriots in Somerset County. Most of these games have an awful lot of empty seats in them. And to sell out a minor league baseball season year after year after year is an amazing accomplishment. And if you listen to Jesse, if you look at the things that Jesse does, what he tries to do is to create novelty. And the team has been on NBC, ESPN, CNN, Sports Illustrated, all these things for all kinds of wacky promotions, including things like dancing baseball players. They get out there and they do the Macarena in between the innings, right? They've got a breakdancing first base coach. They've got sometimes they play their games wearing Scottish kilts. They just do different things that are just so neat and so outrageous that they attract attention. And here's what Jesse says. Every organization, every business is in the first impression business. You have got to try to figure out how are you going to be different from your peers. Guys, do you know how many real estate agents there are in New Jersey? In January of 2020, we're just about a year ago, 54,000 real estate agents in the state of New Jersey, 1.5 million in the United States. And how are you going to separate yourself? What Jesse says is that we've got to think about, we're always in the first impression business. In fact, first impressions and last impressions are absolutely everything. Here's what Jesse says. Every interaction is a chance for you to have fun with your fans. And for us, I would replace fans with clients. How do we make this a fun experience? Always show them that you care. And then once you've shown them that you care, the next time you get an opportunity to show them again, show them again. How do we do that? How do we find ways to show people that we value them? It goes back to the Callaways in terms of showing gratitude, right? And here's what he says here in the business. When we think about the perfect fan experience, right, we think about every touch point, every time that they interact with our business, from the website to the phone calls to merchandising, whatever it is, you name it, every time that someone interacts with us is an opportunity for us to make them feel special. How do we do it? How do we do it? Create moments that make people feel like they matter. Diana Kokoska, who used to be the president of Keller Williams MAPS Coaching, said that when she grew up, she said her dad had said to her, just imagine that everybody has a little sign taped to their back. And it doesn't say kick me. That's the one I used to tape to my brother's back. But it didn't say kick me. What it says is make me feel special, right? How do we do that? And how do we get purposeful about that? He goes on to say that your customers are your best marketers. So you need to make every single one of these touch points remarkable. What does remarkable mean, right? It's kind of getting back to Seth Godin, another marketing genius of our generation, who wrote the book Purple Cow. He says purple cows are remarkable. Remarkable means worthy of talking about. Cows, by their very nature, are boring. They're big, they're smelly, they're brown, they're black, they got white spots, they got brown spots. But if you're driving across the country and you see a cow that's purple, you're going to stop the car, take out your phone, take a picture, because that is just so incredible that you can't wait to tell people about it. That's what remarkable looks like. And what Jesse says is if you make every interaction, if you attempt to make it remarkable, that your clients will become your best marketers. In fact, here's what he says. We spend our money on experiential touch points, not conventional marketing. We do not spend our money as a baseball team on conventional, traditional advertising. What we do is we spend our money on making our interactions with our client fan base so amazing experiences that they become our marketing tools. How would we do that in our own businesses? How do we budget for that? I talked in some other classes in Ignite. We sometimes talk about the timeline, contract to close timelines. And one of the things that I've suggested is we need to do the transactional things that we do in new and novel ways. And we need to even add in certain things that nobody sees coming. And I shared an example of an agent friend of mine who what she would do is at the time of moving, when her buyers were just in that final week, packing up, getting ready to move, things were chaotic, things were stressful, is that she would offer to bring them dinner. And what she did was she called them up and she said, look, I know that you're moving in a couple of days and things are nuts for you right now. It would be really fun for me. Let me just bring dinner to you guys tonight. And they would sometimes push back and say, no, that's sweet, but you don't need to do that. And she would insist. And they would say, thanks. I really appreciate that. How did that make folks feel? Right? It made them feel special. It made them feel important. But here's how she amped that up. And this is what I love. When she brought the dinner, invariably they would look at her and say, oh my God, I can't believe of all the things that you brought this. This is like my favorite thing in the world. I can't believe you brought that. And it was a magical moment. How did she do it? Go back to systems. Go back to Blanchard and Bowles and systems. What would a world-class experience look like? How could we implement a system to make sure that it happened consistently? And here's her system. She's touring homes. She gets into the kitchen and she asks a series of questions. Could you see yourself preparing a meal in this kitchen? It doesn't matter what the answer is. But the next question is, what's your favorite food to cook? And it doesn't matter what the answer is, because her next question is the key question. What's your favorite thing to eat? And it just seems so conversational that they were just chatting as they're walking through the house. But when she got the answer to what's your favorite thing to eat, she wrote it down in her notes because she knew that at some point she was going to offer to bring them dinner in the week before they moved. And if she brought their favorite food, it would feel like magic. And that's what she was trying to create. Guys, this is what Jesse Cole says. If we budget for that kind of an experience and just factor that into our operational overhead, I just got to have the money to do this, you will find your clients will do the marketing for you and you don't have to spend as much time advertising in other areas, right? Love Jesse Cole and the way he thinks. Any takeaways from what he talks about? The Savannah Bananas are just fun. I don't know. Maybe baseball is not your thing, minor league baseball, but I got to tell you something. They are just a hoot. They just, every single thing that they do is designed to create a fun experience. And baseball is sort of a second part of that, right? Any takeaways from what Jesse talks about? If not, I'm going to go to one last thing, and I got 4 minutes to do it in. I'm going to go to Maya Angelou first, who I love, and we all miss her. And here's what Maya said. I've learned that people will forget what you said. They'll forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel, right? Everything that we've talked about, from Jesse Cole to the Callaways to Christopher Lochhead to Bowles and to Blanchard, everything is about how do we create an experience where people feel special. And one of the ideas that you can use to do this is what we call mapping the customer journey. What does that mean? It means simply this. You think about a client and you think about all the steps involved in the transaction. Our transactional business is very predictable. First we do this, then we do that, then we do that, then we do that. And quite honestly, if you go back to Lochhead, what he says in his books, Niche Down and Play Bigger, is you're not going to be able to do those things incrementally better than anyone else. You've got to do them differently than other people. And so number one, start to think about what are all the steps in the sequence. And then what you do is you map this journey. Step number two is identify. Step one actually is to think about the client type, because the sequence can be different for a first-time buyer than a seller, than an investor. Think about who your client type is first, and then think about what's the sequence. Identify the first step, the second step, the third step. Just kind of put it on a whiteboard or put it on Post-it notes, just in a linear fashion, so that we go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, till we get to the end. That's step two. Now, step number three, under each step, start to think about what the emotional experience is like for clients as they're going through this transaction, and assign an emotion that you think it's likely that people will be experiencing. We know that people move through stages of excitement to sometimes panic, to sometimes agitation, to sometimes frustration, to sometimes all these different emotions at different stages, right? When we first get our offer accepted, it's a mixture of excitement that can lead quickly into buyer's remorse or panic. When we go into inspections, it can be things that can lead to just frustration. And when we get those things resolved, it can lead to happiness again. Think about all the different emotions at each step along the way. And then step number 4 is this: identify a unique way that you can interact with the consumer in that emotional space. What is it that you can do in that moment to kind of help either neutralize negative emotions or amplify positive emotions? What can you do? Things like buying that dinner for someone is a way to take someone who is in that sort of chaotic emotional place and bring a sense of making them feel special. How do we do that? And this mapping model is, think about the client type, break down the steps in the transaction, think about what the emotional experience would be like at each step, and then plan for and budget for an appropriate interaction in those emotional moments. This is called mapping the customer journey. I love, love, love this idea. I didn't come up with it. I stole it from a Remax agent. I steal all the ideas. I don't have any good ideas of my own. I'm not that smart, but I am smart enough to recognize a good idea when I see one. I am the king of R&D, and it is not research and develop. It is rip off and duplicate. Nothing wrong with that, right? A raving fan is a client who has determined that it is in their best interest that your business grows. Not in your best interest, in theirs. That's a raving fan. They bring you clients. They don't bring you referrals, right? And so we're going to wrap it up here. Any ahas, any takeaways? I just want 1 or 2 nuggets of things that you heard today that maybe you're going to think about implementing, or things that maybe you're thinking differently about. I always like to end these with ahas. I just want 1 or 2 takeaways today that really jumped out at you. Anybody?
Sure.
Go ahead, Dave.
So it's about learning to like people. Sometimes you might meet somebody, and I think you always have to find something about them that you can like.
Amen, brother. I think that's not just a sales skill. I think that's just a human skill. And we have become so polarized as a society right now. It's a little terrifying in some ways to me personally, but there is always something likable that you can find in someone. Now, you may decide that you don't have to work with everyone. And that's your prerogative, right? I did say sometimes in my own business, I had a no jerk policy. If I thought you were a jerk, I just didn't have the bandwidth for jerks. But you know what? There is something likable in everyone. And if you're going to be in the people business, you've got to learn to find it, because it is taxing and tedious otherwise. People, they'll take a lot out of you. They'll take a lot out of you. Any other ahas besides learn to like people? Still have 9 people in the room. Anybody else have an idea before we wrap it up? Go ahead.
The niche. That was really impressive to me. Develop your niche.
It is so counterintuitive. We believe that if we can get ourselves in front of the biggest market possible, that we can have the best success. And here's the reality of that. In order to be relevant to the biggest market possible, your marketing message has to be completely generic. And people don't pay for generic. People pay for expert knowledge. And so it is just counterintuitive, but trust this. Just look, success leaves clues, man. If you look at the top agents, they do not try to spend their time. And now, here's the thing. I'm not suggesting that if you're focusing on your market and say, okay, I live in Westfield, the market I focused on when I was actively selling more, and I still do business, a few deals every year, but I worked sort of the train line from Fanwood to Scotch Plains to Westfield to Garwood to Cranford. That was kind of the market that I spent a lot of my time in. If my brother called up and said, hey, I need you to sell my house in Rockaway, would I sell it? Of course I would. But here's the difference. You don't ever try to create new business opportunities outside of your target market. You don't spend energy prospecting outside of your target market. Always try to create the opportunities in your niche. If your sphere of influence and other things come out of other places that are not necessarily in your geographic niche, if they make good business sense, do them. But don't spend your energy trying to diffuse yourself too far out because you can't be an expert in that many markets. Right? I'm glad you got that one, Dave. All right, guys, unless there's something else, we're going to park it here. It's 5 minutes after. I did keep you a little bit after, but I hope there was some fun takeaways here. Some of these books are just really fun reads. I love Christopher Lochhead. He has a great podcast, #1 business podcast on iTunes, and it's called Finding Your Different or Follow Your Different. It used to be called Legends and Losers, but now he called it Follow Your Different or something like that. And here's the thing. He's just a little irreverent at times, which is why some folks found him a little off-putting, but he is just an amazing genius to listen to. I think Jesse Cole is just a hell of a lot of fun with his baseball Savannah Bananas. There's so many different places where you can look at different successful businesses and start to see what they do to create raving fans and how do we adapt those ideas into our own businesses. It's all about the experience, but if we focus on that, I think we're going to have great businesses.